Welcome to the Adventure Together podcast. In this episode, Guy and Heather speak to Hannah and Nathan Anderson. Hannah is the author of several books, including All That's Good, Humble Roots, and Made for More, and Nathan is a former church pastor.
A comment that says, I'm a man in a woman's body 10 years ago, 15 years ago would have made no sense whatsoever. And yet to the millennial, the Gen Z, it means a lot. And the whole philosophical self. How are your children interacting in that world? What things are they bringing home or reading that makes you go, oh my word, I've never had to answer this before?
They're bringing home, all of it.
Coming home, yep. We've had all the conversations.
All of them. And it has been startling in the sense that we've had an open home, an open conversation. We want our children to feel like they can talk with us. No subject is untouchable. But the degree to which we're having the conversations, just by virtue of their friendships or being in school or having access to certain conversations online, I don't even think it's a question of, one particular place these messages are coming from. It's coming from everywhere, everywhere. And so one of the things we have been challenged in our conversations with them is, what is a uniquely Christian response to this? Because a lot of the pressures that they feel is the pressure to love their friends, to love their friends that are coming out. Yeah. I mean, to love their friends who are identifying as trans or non-binary, and to say, how do we live in faithful presence and relationship with people, and also be compelled by what is true and good and beautiful. And navigating those tensions, I think, is what has been at the heart of a lot of our conversations. And when you enter those conversations, you find that there's a whole lot of other things going on around them. And sometimes the presenting issue is just the access point for a whole lot of other things that are happening in their friends' lives. And helping our children see past that to say, what's really going on here? This child, or this friend is lonely, or this friend needs the truth of being loved by God. And so it has been surprising, I would say, even in the last year or two, that we've just gotten hit with every conversation you can imagine.
Parent, and Hannah probably does a much better job than I do. But as a parent, you can't let you can't make it emotional. Like, you can't make the conversation emotional. You can't show like, oh, this is a terrible thing, we can't talk about this. Or you can't say, well, don't you ever do that. Or you can't respond to the conversations that way. But to have it as, okay, well, let's talk through this. Tell me why. Hannah's very good at drawing out the kids, giving them that safe space to ask those questions, and to where it's like she said, no subject should be taboo. We're a family, but also push back a little bit on the kids, because particularly Phoebe as the oldest, Hannah's like, we're in our 40s, we've lived life a little bit longer. You need to, there has to be some say, okay, well, you need to think about this, what about this? And, where someone who is not as mature, they haven't thought those things. And so Hannah is very good at kind of navigating those conversations with her children.
Usually I find the best approach to conversation is to make it more complicated than they've heard. So to say, this is the narrative you've received, this is easy, one and done, it's just straightforward. And to introduce questions to say, well, what if I added this piece of information? What if I said that your body is important and that it tells you things about who you are, and it's not just something to be manipulated or cast aside? And once you begin to introduce new information, that reflects reality, or reflects what the Word of God teaches. I think a child who has a heart to love God and to love His Word and is really wrestling will take that through the process. And as parents, you have to be willing to let the process happen. And like Nathan said, not to short circuit it with your own shock or surprise or whatever it is that can really send a signal to the child too that they've done something wrong by even broaching the subject.
To hear more from Hannah and Nathan Anderson as they talk about the challenge of the pandemic, how to navigate difficult conversations in parenting, moving from being an employed pastor to the secular workplace, and many other topics, simply search Adventure Together wherever you get your podcasts, or visit www.commission.global/podcast.